Welcome to Nanabelle's Bible Stories, where we tell stories to kids of all ages. We are here to tell an interim story. In between the stories of Isaac and Jacob and Esau, there's a story about Isaac. Now, there's not a lot of stories about Isaac in the Bible on his own without his father Abraham or his sons Jacob and Esau. Here's Isaac and his wife Rebekah. There's not a whole lot of stories, and we don't get a whole lot about him except through the stories about his father and his sons. But here is one that has a little bit about him that shows he has the same type of thinking as his father Abraham. We're going to be in chapter 26 this morning of the book of Genesis. So we'll start out at verse 1. And we'll start now. It says, now there was a famine in the land. Again, so there had been a famine before when Abraham was alive, and Abraham had gone down to the land of Canaan, or the area of Gerar, it's called, to see a man named King Abimelech. And Isaac also went to Gerar to his father's friend, and that's King Abimelech right there, the king of the Philistines. And the Lord appeared to Isaac and said, do not go down to Egypt, which was tempting to do because Egypt was full of food and all kinds of luxury and all kinds of provision. Egypt was a very growing empire in this day. So the Lord spoke to Isaac and said, do not go down to Egypt. Stay in the land of which I shall tell you. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with you, and I will bless you. For to you and your descendants I will give these lands. And I will establish the oath which I swore to your father Abraham. So God had already given Abraham the promise that he was going to give these lands of the Canaanites to him and to his descendants. And Abraham believed that all the days of his life. And now God is telling Isaac the same thing, because Isaac was the promised son through Sarah. And he actually will inherit these lands from God as well. So, and God goes on, he says, I will multiply your descendants as the stars of heaven, and I will give your descent by your descendants, all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. So by Isaac's descendants, all the nations will be blessed, because, the Lord said, because Abraham obeyed me, and he kept my charge and kept my commandments, my statutes and my laws. And so because of Abraham, Isaac is going to be blessed, and he lived in Gerar. We see Isaac reaping the benefits of his father's faithfulness to God. And later in Deuteronomy 28, Moses actually is the one who wrote the first 5 books of the Bible. And he wrote this story that we're telling right now. But later in another book of the Bible, Deuteronomy, chapter 28, he wrote these words. It says, now it shall be, if you diligently obey the Lord your God, being careful to do all his commandments, the Lord your God will set you on high above all the nations of the earth. And these blessings will come upon you and overtake you if you obey the Lord your God. And God tells you the same thing. These words were written to the Israelites, but God put them in his Bible, which is his words for you today. So Deuteronomy chapter 28 is verses for you. It says, if you obey, that the Lord God will do these things. And it goes on to say these, blessed shall you be in the city, and blessed shall you be in the country. Blessed shall be your offspring, your children, of your body, and the produce of your field, and the offspring of your flocks. Now, we don't have flocks today, but he's meaning your business, whatever you do, that blessed shall be your business if you obey the Lord. And then it says also in Deuteronomy 28, the next verse, it says, all the peoples of the earth will see that you are called by the name of the Lord, and they will be afraid of you. And there is more, but we will go on. Because there are other things after that give you the curses that will follow you if you don't obey the Lord and if you don't worship him. And we won't go into those right now. We'll go into those in another story. But we'll go on here. We do see the promises being fulfilled in the life of Isaac and Jacob. And the children are blessed, but each person has the responsibility to walk with God and obey him. And we'll see that in further stories about Jacob and Esau. Now, even the most faithful people are not always perfect, and we saw Abraham do something which wasn't so great. And that was a couple chapters ago. And in this story, we see Isaac do the exact same thing, even though he wasn't even born when his father did this. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I will just tell you that when the men of Gerar, I'll just tell the story. So we'll take out Jacob and Esau because they're not really in this part of the story. The men of Gerar came and we'll take out a king of Amalek for a moment. Anyway, they came and they chatted with Isaac and Rebekah, and they were like, oh wow, he's got a pretty sister. So the men of Gerar came and said, they asked about Isaac's wife, and he said, she is my sister. That's what I was going to say. For he was afraid to say, she is my wife, thinking the men of this place might kill me on account of Rebekah, for she is so beautiful. Now, if you remember, Abraham had done the same thing with Sarah, and this was before Isaac was born. He had told King Abimelech that Sarah was his sister. So these men are asking, and Isaac is doing the same thing. And so they'll go away, and they think that she's really pretty sister. Here, we'll just put up a little rampart right here. And King Abimelech, he built that, and he's standing on top of it one day. And it had been a long time that Isaac and Rebekah had been in the land of Gerar. But King Abimelech looked out, and he saw Isaac caressing his wife. You know how people do when they're married, they kiss and they hug, and so he was caressing his wife like a man does when he's married. And Abimelech called to Isaac and said, behold, she is your wife. And he gets down off his rampart and he comes over here and he runs over to Isaac and he says, what? Why did you say she is my sister? And Isaac said, because I thought I might die on account of her. What is this you have done? Said King Abimelech. One of the men could have easily have taken her as their own, and then we would have guilt. You would have brought guilt on us. And so Abimelech warned all his people, he who ever touches this man or his wife shall be put to death. Because Abimelech remembered how God had threatened death to him. God had appeared to Abimelech and said, I am going to kill you. And Abimelech was like, why? And God is like, because you have taken Abraham's wife, that was back then, Abraham's wife into your harem. And Abimelech's like, I didn't know. And so he's remembering this. And he's like, I remember God wanted to kill me. And God made all the women of his land barren. That means they couldn't have children back then. So there's a lot of consequences when the same thing happened to Abraham and Sarah. And so he remembered all this, and he told the people of the land to leave them alone and leave Rebekah here alone. Now, I've lived a while, and let me just say, behavioral tendencies tend to run in families genetically, I think. I've seen this, even if someone isn't raised in their biological family who gave birth to them, but they're maybe adopted or something like that. They still have the same mannerisms and predispositions that tell them how to act, which are similar to the biological family. Now, as followers of Jesus, we should be self-aware as to what our genetic tendencies are, which lead us maybe possibly in a negative direction. Some aspects of our inborn natural personality might be sinful, like pride or greed, selfishness, laziness, things like those that can be very detrimental or bad for your life. You might not, or some could be not inherently sinful at all. Some might not be sinful. Like if you're maybe a little bit outgoing or loud or maybe quiet and don't like to be around crowds, and that's just your genetic tendency. that might not still be advantageous to your life. Maybe God wants you to do something and calls you to be a little bit more courageous and to be out there with people, but you don't really want to be. It's best to follow the Lord's leading and to change if you need to. Even your inner personality can change, and I have changed over the years. When I was little, I used to be very shy when I was a young girl, and I'm not that shy anymore. I am a little quieter, of course, than I used to be, but I'm not shy. As in Isaac's case, he probably thought he was being careful, and careful is good. But in this case, it meant that he offended both his wife by not claiming her as his own, and just like Abraham did the same thing to Sarah, and he offended his father's friend again. So it's best to walk by seeking what the Lord wants and not just go by our natural inclinations all the time. And not to say, oh, I can't change, because we can. And we need to know too that what God's character is and to be like him. And his instructions for a good life are found in the Bible. So read your Bible, and the book of Proverbs is a good book to read to gain wisdom. We're not in Proverbs today, we're in Genesis, but go to Proverbs and read the book of Proverbs. It'll give you very practical advice for having a life of wisdom. Now, I've been thinking a lot about my life lately, what kind of legacy I want to leave. And my desire is to be remembered as a woman of wisdom. And I've not always had wisdom, especially in my younger years when there was so much going on and a lot of stress. I was tied down by weights of responsibility and caring for people, and not a lot of avenues to share my wisdom when I did have wisdom. But I did ask the Lord when I was young for wisdom. I don't want to be a flat character. Do you know what a flat character is? A flat character, like in a movie or a book, a movie maybe, is a kind of character who isn't named, maybe, and maybe just comes in for one scene, one role, and you don't know their backstory at all. You don't know what they're thinking, their inner thinking, whereas the main characters, usually the person who writes the movie or the book, it will tell you their motivations and the things that mean something to them. But in action movies, a flat character, if they come into the movie, you realize that probably in the next scene, they'll probably be blown up in some kind of explosion because they're expendable. So that's a flat character in literature. But the main characters in literature, in books and movies that we love, and in the Bible, like these respected forefathers that we've been telling stories about, here are some things that they have in common. If you want to be somebody that is wise and well-rounded, this is some things that you can think about. A main character is curious, and they seek the truth. And they learn and they grow. They don't stay in one place. And we saw that in the life of Abraham. We saw that God asked him to move, and he did. He moved out of his pagan city of Ur and moved all the way to Canaan. Another thing is that they communicate well. And they encourage others when they do communicate. They aren't just talking about self all the time. They think about the other person, and they think about what that person wants to talk about and encourages them in the process of the communication. They question established ideas, and they don't follow foolish crowds or make their opinions very quickly. They gather information from lots of sources before they make a decision about what they think about a matter. And they sacrifice for what they believe in. So they stand up and they have courage for what they believe in. So those are some things that main characters do. And do you want to be a flat character? You don't want to blow up in the next scene? Or do you want to be a main character? And these are true with the friends of God. Let's be a main character in the life of God. And that's who he will notice. He will notice somebody who has all these characteristics, people who seek truth, who want to know him and want to know how to have wisdom. So Isaac's character, let's talk about him for a minute. In the 16th video, it shares a little bit about him. It's the Friend of God video number 9 about Abraham. This is when Isaac was submitting to Abraham back when he was a boy. And Abraham had that sacrificial test where he had to sacrifice on the mountain. And I won't give it all away, but Isaac went along with him. And it seems to me that Isaac is a natural follower. He's not a leader, and his natural inclination is to be a follower. And we'll see that in some of the next stories too. But he also did honor God, and for that he was blessed. So we're going to do a change of scene here and see a little bit more about Isaac and his character and the things that he did in Gerar. So let me do that change. I'll be right back. Now we're in the same chapter of Genesis, chapter 26, verses 12 through 14 now. And it talks about Isaac being blessed in the land. It says, now Isaac sowed crops. He sowed, produce, plants, things to eat in the field. And it says in the same year, he reaped 100-fold. That means the Lord blessed him, not, over a period of time, but almost immediately the Lord was showing him that he was with him. And the man became very rich and continued to grow richer until he became very wealthy. Now back then, wealth was measured in flocks and herds, how many animals you had, or how much land you could control. And it's kind of the same way today. Real wealth is found in assets, things that are tangible, like gold, silver, land. We don't necessarily all have flocks and herds, but real wealth, some people think real wealth is money, the paper money that you have, but that can go away in an instant if the currency rate changes. So you definitely want to have assets if you are considered wealthy. And he was considered wealthy in that day, and he definitely was. He had possessions of flocks and herds and a great household, so that the Philistines envied him. They were jealous. Now, all the wells, like this over here is a well. A well is something where, we know that you get water from it, right? Back then, it took a long time to dig a well. They didn't have heavy equipment and well drillers that would drill a well in a day, put a long pipe down 400 feet down into the earth with heavy equipment and machines. They do it real easy today, but back then they did it by hand. And so if they had a well dug, it took a lot of time and a lot of effort, and people knew that if you had dug a well, that you pretty much controlled that land. So he was in the same area that his father Abraham had dug a well in, and he was using the well. And it said here, in the next verses, all the wells which Abraham's servants had dug there, when Abraham had spent time in Gerar, the Philistines came and stopped up the wells. And here we'll have the Philistines come in and they stop up the well with dirt. They put dirt in the well so the water couldn't be used anymore. And in other words, they obstructed Isaac's ability to use water. Abimelech even came in, and he was jealous too. And he started seeing Isaac's, and my hair is crazy, but I'm sorry. But he started seeing Isaac's wealth, and he said, "Go away, for you are too powerful for us." So even King Abimelech, who was a friend, or had been a friend, told Isaac that he needed to go. So we'll take King Abimelech out of there, and we'll take the flocks and herds out, because they're going to move. Isaac and all his family are going to move, and they're going to move down to the valley. And we're going to put up some different trees. Some trees. They go over to the valley. They're going to move to another area. And we'll bring Jacob over here. And sheep. And we'll put another well over here. So, I don't know how that looks. Does that look okay? So, it said, then Isaac dug again the wells of his father Abraham, which had been in the days of that time. And he gave them the same names again that his father had given them. And then Isaac's servants, we'll have some servants come in. We don't have servants. Here's a servant of Isaac. And he's in the same colors, kind of, isn't he? The herdsmen of Isaac, they had found flowing water. And the herdsmen of Gerar, here they come in again, the same herdsmen that had stopped up the other ones. They come again and they quarrel with the herdsmen of Isaac. And they say, the water is ours. And they dug another well. Isaac and them dug another well. And they decided, okay, we'll just have to keep digging wells and see if we can use that one. So they dug another well, and they quarreled over it also. So we're going to change the scene one last time. So then Isaac moved away from that place, and he didn't fight or argue. Do you notice that? He was pretty much just going along with whatever the men of Gerar wanted him to do. So in that way, that's why I think he's kind of a follower, somebody that isn't somebody who makes waves. He doesn't have a lot of contention or conflict with people. He doesn't like that. So he dug another well, and they didn't quarrel over that one. And so he named that well Rehoboth, it's called, which means a broad place. For he says, at last the Lord has made room for us, and we will be fruitful in the land. And so then he went up from there. This is another place. He went up from there to Beersheba. And here he is in Beersheba. And the Lord appeared to him here. And on the same night he got there, and the Lord said to him, I am the God of your father Abraham. Do not fear, for I am with you. I will bless you and multiply your descendants for the sake of my servant Abraham. So God finally spoke to Isaac and personally assured him of his provision and protection. And that caused a response in Isaac. It said, so Isaac built an altar there and called upon the name of the Lord and pitched his tent there. So here we are in Beersheba. He pitched his tent in Beersheba. And Isaac's servants also dug a well there. And we're going to put the well, right here. That's where the well is. So, and then his family came and they all stayed in Beersheba. Oops, Jacob just went on the floor. So, all right. We'll just leave Jacob on the floor. So, this is the first time we see Isaac taking his relationship with God seriously to a whole nother level, where he probably dedicates his life to the Lord personally. And we hadn't really seen that before. He'd never built an altar before. He'd never called upon the name of the Lord, because like it says in the previous chapters of Genesis about his father, Abraham called on the name of the Lord, called on the Lord every night. He would go out under the stars and talk to God. And that's what Abraham's life was all about. And this is the first time, actually, in Isaac's life that we see him calling upon the name of the Lord. So that's a great thing. When he finally saw that the Lord was going to bless him, the Lord was going to make a way for him. But until now, Isaac had lived a good life. He had inheritance from his father. He had wealth. The Lord had always provided every need, and he hadn't had much struggle. But, this time, because of all the dealings with those men of Gerar stopping up the wells and moving him on, God allowed Isaac to feel a little bit of struggle and strife over water rights for his family and flocks. At least God didn't make him suffer the famine that was going on and the effects going on elsewhere. But sometimes as humans, we need a little bit of resistance in order to know that our blessings come from the Lord. And they're not automatic, but they come from him. So the Lord was good to promise Isaac that he'd take care of him, but he did let him feel a little bit of the effects of some struggle. And sometimes God is good to do that. And so if you're going through a struggle right now, just know that God doesn't mean it for your harm, but he means it for your good. Sometimes it takes a little bit of struggle for us to turn and go, you know what? You are God, and I worship and honor you, and you are where my blessings come from. So that's what happened with Isaac. And so we have another little story at the end here where it says King Abimelech came over from Gerar and came to Isaac with his men. He came with his commander of the army and his advisor. And Isaac said to them, "Why have you come to me, since you hate me and you've driven me away from you?" And Abimelech said, "I see plainly that the Lord has been with you." And so we say, "Let there now be an oath between us, so that we would be friends, and let you make a covenant with us, so that you will do us no harm, just as we have treated you well in the time that you were in our land, and have not touched you, and have not done anything but good. And we sent you away in peace." Peace. Not really, but they did treat him well for years and years and years. They want to make a covenant with Isaac. And so they've come all that way to make a covenant of friendship, because they said, "You are now the blessed of the Lord, and we know that you are." And so then it said Isaac made them a feast, and they ate and drank. And then in the morning they rose early and exchanged their oaths. I don't know how they did that. Sometimes it was a blood oath. We've talked about that before. They exchanged oaths and said, "Yes, we will be friends from here on." And so Abraham had made an oath with Abimelech, but now Isaac is too. And Isaac sent them away, and they departed in peace. Now it came about the same day that Isaac's servants came in and told him that the well that they had dug, the one that they dug, had produced water. They said, "We found water!" And they were so happy. And peace always brings blessings. He made the covenant of peace, and that same day it said the well produced water. So peace always brings blessings. And there is a verse in Matthew 5:9 that says, "Blessed are the peacemakers." So next time we're going to talk about Isaac and Esau and the inheritance that they get. You won't want to miss that one. We ask you to stay with us and subscribe if you would, so that you can get these stories and share them. Share them with children. Share them with people who want to know the Bible stories that maybe haven't heard the Bible stories. There's many, many people in the world today that don't know these stories. So share these stories if you would. And comment below on things that you think about the story or things that you'd like to see. All right. Nanabelle loves you, and Jesus loves you also. And we want you to grow wise so that you can do great and marvelous things in this wonderful world He created. Have a great day. Bye.